Hi, it's Cindy. Today we're going to talk about Chapter 14 in the Coding Handbook. And as you may recall from the assignment schedule, Chapter 14 in the Coding Handbook corresponds with Chapter 1 in the ICD-10 CM Codebook. The first diagnosis is the chronic gonococcal cystitis. Our pathway is cystitis, then gonococcal, A54.01. And when we look at our alphabetic index, you're going to see that chronic and gonococcal are at the same indentation level in the alphabetical index, and that's important. So when we look in our code book, here's cystitis, and we start looking down here, there's acute, here's chronic, but when I look in these subterms, none of them are gonococcal. So we're going to go back to that indentation level and start looking for gonococcal. We have to go back to the top of the page, and there it is, A5401. So then we're going to look that up in our and now we're in our tabular A5401, gonococcal cystitis and urethritis unspecified. And if you remember from previous lectures, the word and in the code book can mean and, or it can mean or. And in this case it means or because our patient has gonococcal cystitis. They do not have urethritis. So A5401 is the right code, and I don't see anything up here to give us any coding instructions other than that. So we're going to go with that as our code for chronic gonococcal cystitis. And then if we look at our rationale, the only thing I'm going to talk about is in the Coding Handbook. To remind you, on page 148, it tells us when the main term has been located, main term in this case is cystitis, a subterm for the organism always takes precedent over more general subterms such as acute or chronic, when both occur at the same indentation level. And remember, chronic and gonococcal were at the same indentation level, so because gonococcal describes the organism, that code takes precedence. So that's what that means. I also wanted to interject here that you may not always have a guideline that's going to affect your code assignment. Most of the time you will, but not always. So if you're finding you just don't know which one would fit, maybe there isn't one. That's why you're going to use answer keys. I like using answer keys because it gives a student immediate feedback on a question. I believe homework should help us learn something, and we should not be punished if we don't do it correctly. So my request of you is that you at least attempt to find codes. I don't want you to not attempt to find something and then submit a blank homework, and then this gives you access to the answer key, and now you can just copy and paste into your graded document and submit that. You haven't learned as much, I don't think, as you would have learned if you had tried to find the code. You really need to get familiar with the code book, and the only way to do that is to search it, to look for things. So I do expect you, at a minimum, to be able to find codes. Tying them with the guideline may be a little bit tricky at first, but the more we do of these, the better you're going to get at it. And in the long run, you're going to thank me for all this work, because it will show you, you will know when you finish this course how the guidelines impact the selection of a code. So that's what I'm trying to do here. All right, our next exercise is an anaerobic gram-negative sepsis. And the name of a specific gram-negative organism is not given in this case, but we're going to find when we start looking for our codes that we don't need a specific name. We just need to know that it's an anaerobic gram-negative. If you don't know the term anaerobic, that means this organism can grow without air, without oxygen. So that is significant in a deep wound, for example, is where we might see anaerobes growing. The code we're going to look for, our main term is sepsis, then gram-negative, then organism. Sepsis, gram-negative, and then anaerobic. Organism is like a non-essential modifier for the gram-negative term in this case. So let's go to our alphabetical index. So here we are in our alphabetical index, and here we are with sepsis, and we're looking for gram-negative anaerobic, and here we go. Gram-negative anaerobic A41.4. So now we'll go to the tabular. And now that we're in the tabular, I want to just bring to your attention the category A41 has a lot of information on it before you actually get to the codes. This little fourth right here tells us that to be complete, this needs a fourth character. Right now the category only has 3. Then we have some instructional notes. Code first any of these things. And in our case, we don't have this information, but if we did, we would do that. We would code first any of those. Excludes 1, as a reminder. We do not code this code, A41 category, with any of these. And then excludes 2 is telling us that the patient could have this and any of these. So it is possible for the patient to have both. So a lot of instructional notes here, and always read those, because chances are good when you get into the hospital record you have a lot more information than just these one-liners. Move down here, so A41, here we go, A41.4, sepsis due to anaerobes. So for the specific diagnosis, I just chose a very simple, for a diagnosis of sepsis, assign the appropriate code. I have a slide on MRSA just to remind you that there are different codes for methicillin-resistant staph and methicillin-susceptible staph. These are very common infections, especially in nursing homes and in hospitals. So our first MRSA question is sepsis due to MRSA. So our pathway is sepsis as our main term, and then we just follow the path: Staphylococcus aureus, methicillin-resistant. So in our alphabetical index, we're under sepsis, and we're looking for Staphylococcus. And what's interesting, isn't it, they have the MSSA up here, but not the MRSA. So we just keep looking down because we want Staphylococcus. Staphylococcus aureus, methicillin-susceptible. Don't want that. Methicillin-resistant, A41.02. That's the one we want. And when we get to the alphabetical index, here we go, A4102, sepsis due to methicillin-resistant staph aureus. So that is that diagnosis. And for this diagnosis, there is a guideline that talks about combination codes from MRSA. When a patient's diagnosed with an infection due to MRSA, and that infection has a combination code that includes the causal organism, that's your code. And it's important in this particular guideline to pay attention to what the guideline is telling you not to code. You're not going to code B95.62, and you're not going to assign a code from Z16.11, resistance to penicillins, because this code already says methicillin resistant. You don't want to code unnecessarily. So that one takes care of that diagnosis. Before we go into this one, I'm going to do a separate recording because it's long, but I think it's very informative, and I don't want to make these recordings so long that they become laborious. So I'm going to end this one for now, and we'll do a part 2 in a couple of minutes.